Dear students, please open your textbook before you start listening. Underline important lines and mark difficult words. Use earphone or headphone for full concentration. Happy listening and happy learning. Page number 118. Based on all this, a decision is made about how to respond and the information is passed on to the motor areas which control the movement of voluntary muscles. For example, our leg muscles. However, certain sensations are distinct from seeing or hearing. For example, how do we know that we have eaten enough? The sensation of feeling full is because of a center associated with hunger, which is in a separate part of the forebrain. Figure 7.3 Human Brain. Study the label diagram of the human brain. We have seen that the different parts have a specific function. Can we find out the functions of each part? Let us look at the other use of the word reflex that we have talked about in the introduction. Our mouth waters when we see food we like without our meaning to. Our heartbeat without our thinking about it. In fact, we cannot control these actions easily by thinking about them, even if we wanted to. Do we have to think about or remember to breathe or digest food? So, in between the simple reflex actions like change in the size of the pupil and the thought out actions such as moving a chair, there is another set of muscle movement over which we do not have any thinking control. Many of these involuntary actions are controlled by the midbrain and the hindbrain. All in these involuntary actions, including blood pressure, salivation, and vomiting, are controlled by the medulla in the hindbrain. Think about activities like walking in a straight line, riding a bicycle, picking up a pencil. These are possible due to a part of the hindbrain called the cerebellum. It is responsible for precision of voluntary actions and maintaining the posture and balance of the body. Imagine what would happen if each of these events failed to take place if we were not thinking about it. Page number 119. 7.1.3 How are these tissues protected? A delicate organ like the brain, which is so important for a variety of activities, needs to be carefully protected. For this, the body is designed so that the brain sits inside a bony box. Inside the box, the brain is contained in a fluid-filled balloon which provides further shock absorption. If you run your hand down the middle of your back, you will feel a hard, bumpy structure. This is the vertebral column or backbone which protects the spinal cord. 7.1.4 How does the nervous tissue cause action? So far, we have been talking about nervous tissue and how it collects information, sends it around the body, processes information, makes decision based on information, and conveys decision to muscle for action. In other words, when the action or movement is to be performed, muscle tissue will do the final job. How do animal muscle move? When a nervous impulse reaches the muscle fiber must move. How does a muscle cell move? The simplest notion of movement at the cellular level is that muscle cell will move by changing their shape so that they shorten. So the next question is, how do muscle cells change their shape? The answer must lie in the chemistry of cellular components. Muscle cells have a special protein that change both their shape and their arrangement in the cell in response to nervous electrical impulses. When this happens, new arrangement of these proteins gives the muscle cell a short-term form. Remember, when we talked about muscle tissue in class 9, there were different kinds of muscles, such as voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. Based on what we have discussed so far, What do you think the differences between these would be? Questions. 1. What is the difference between a reflex action and walking? 2. What happens at the synapse between two neurons? 3. Which part of the brain maintains posture and equilibrium of the body? 4. How do we detect the smell of an agarbatti, incense or a stick? 5. What is the role of the brain in reflex action? 7.2. Coordination in plants. Animals have a nervous system for controlling and coordinating the activities of the body. But plants have neither a nervous system nor muscle. So how do they respond to stimuli? When we touch the leaves of a chui mui, the sensitive or touch me not plant of the mimosa family, they begin to fold up and droop. When a seed germinates, the root goes down. The stem comes up into the air. What happens? Firstly, the leaves of the sensitive plant move very quickly in response to touch. Page number 120. There is no growth involved in this movement. On the other hand, the directional movement of seedling is caused by growth. If it is prevented from growing, it will not show any movement. So plants show two different types of movement, one dependent on growth and the other independent of growth. 7.2.1 Immediate response to stimulus. Let us think about the first kind of movement, such as that of the sensitive plant. Since no growth is involved, the plant must actually move its leaves in response to touch. But there is no nervous tissues nor any muscle tissue. How does the plant detect the touch? And how do the leaves move in response? Figure 7.4 The sensitive plant. If we think about where exactly the plant is touched and what part of the plant actually moves, it is apparent that movement happens at a point different from the point of touch. So information that a touch has occurred must be communicated. The plant also uses electrical chemical means to convey this information from cell to cell. But unlike in animals, there is no specialized tissues in plant for the conduction of information. Finally, again as in animal, some cell must change shape in order for movement to happen. Instead of the specialized proteins found in animal muscle cells, plant cells change shape by changing the amount of water in them, resulting in swelling or shrinking, and therefore in changing shapes. 7.2.2 Movement due to growth. Some plants, like the pea plant, climb with other plants or fences by means of tendrils. These tendrils are sensitive to touch. When they come in contact with any support, the part of the tendril in contact with the object does not grow as rapidly as the part of the tendril away from the object. This causes the tendril to circle around the object and thus cling to it. More commonly, plants respond to stimuli slowly by growing in a particular direction. Because this growth is directional, it appears as if the plant is moving. Let us understand this type of movement with the help of an example. Page number 121. Activity 7.2. Fill a conical flask with water. Cover the neck of the flask with a wire mesh. Keep 2 or 3 freshly germinated bean seeds on the wire mesh. Take a cardboard box which is open from one side. Keep the flask in the box in such a manner that the open side of the box faces light coming from a window. After 2 or 3 days, you will notice that the shoots bend towards light and roots away from light. Now turn the flask so that the shoots are away from light and the roots towards light. Leave it undisturbed in this direct condition for a few days. Have the old parts of the shoot and root change direction. Are there differences in the direction of the new growth? What can we conclude from this activity? Environmental triggers such as light, or gravity will change the direction that plant parts grow in. This directional or tropic movement can be either towards the stimulus or away from it. So in two different kind of phototropic movement, shoots respond by bending towards light while roots respond by bending away from it. How does this help the plant? Plant shows tropism in response to other stimuli as well. The root of a plant always grow downward while the shoots usually grow upward and away from the earth. This upward and downward growth of shoot and root, respectively in response to the pull of earth or gravity, is obviously geotropism. Figure 7.6. If hydro means water and chemo refers to the chemical, what would hydrotropism and chemotropism mean? Can we think of example of these kind of directional growth movement? One example of chemotropism is the growth of pollen tube towards ovules, about which we will learn more when we examine the reproductive processes of living organisms. Let us now once again think about how information is communicated in the bodies of multicellular organisms. The movement of the sensitive plant in response to touch is very quick. The movement of sunflower in response to a day or night, on the other hand, is quite slow. Growth-related movement of plant will be even slower. Even in its animal bodies, there are carefully controlled direction to growth. Our arms and fingers grow in certain direction, not haphazardly, so controlled movement can be either slow or fast. If fast responses to stimuli are to be made, information transfer must happen very quickly. For this, the medium of transmission must be able to move rapidly. Page number 122. Electrical impulses are an excellent means for this, but there are limitations to the use of electrical impulses. Firstly, they will reach only those cells that are connected by nervous tissues, not each and every cell in the animal body. Secondly, once an electrical impulse is generated in a cell and transmitted, the cell will take some time to reset its mechanism before it can generate and transmit a new impulse. In other words, cells cannot continually create and transmit electrical impulses. It is thus no wonder that most multicellular organisms use another means of communication between cells, namely chemical communication. If, instead of generating an electrical impulse, stimulated cells release a chemical compound, this compound would diffuse all around the original cell. If other cells around have means to detect this compound using a special molecule on their surfaces, then they would be able to recognize information and even transmit it. This will be slower, of course, but it can potentially reach all cells of the body, regardless of nervous connection, and it can be done steadily and persistently. These compound or hormone used by multicellular organisms for control and coordination show a great deal of diversity, as we would expect. Different plant hormones help to coordinate growth, development, and responses to the environment. They are synthesized at places away from where they act and simply diffuse to the area of action. Let us take an example that we have worked with earlier, activity 7.2. When growing plant detect light, a hormone called auxin, synthesized at the shoot tip, helps the cell to grow longer. When light is coming from one side of the plant, auxin diffuses towards the shady side of the shoot. This concentration of auxin stimulates the cell to grow longer on the side of the shoot which is away from light. Thus, the plant appears to bend towards light. Another example of plant hormone are gibberellins, which, like auxins, help in the growth of the stem. Cytokinins promote cell division, and it is natural then that they are present in greater concentration in areas of rapid cell division, such as in fruits and seeds. These are examples of plant hormone that help in promoting growth. But plant also need signal to stop growing. Abscisic acid is one example of a hormone which inhibits growth. Its effects include wilting of leaves. Now questions. 1. What are plant hormones? 2. How is the movement of leaves of the sensitive plant different from the movement of a shoot towards light? 3. Give an example of a plant hormone that promotes growth. 4. How do auxin promote the growth of a tendril around a support? 5th. Design an experiment to demonstrate heterotropism. Thank you, students. Please listen twice for better understanding. Hope you liked the video and subscribe for upcoming videos.